Ok, bene, buonasera, benvenuti e benvenuti a tutti e a tutte. Apriamo oggi a Palazzo Strozzi Bones of Tomorrow, la prima mostra italiana dell'artista georgiano Andro Eradze. Siamo molto felici di avere questa primogenitura nel nostro paese per questo grande giovane artista emergente, una mostra in collaborazione tra Palazzo Strozzi e lo IED di Firenze. Il talk è oggi tra me, con me, Arturo Galansino, Direttore Generale della Fondazione Palazzo Strozzi e curatore della mostra, insieme a Daria Filardo dello IED Firenze e ovviamente insieme al nostro artista Andro Eradze. Let's switch to English, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Good. Okay, Andro, let's start with the title of the show, Bones of Tomorrow, which is quite a special title. What do you mean with these two words that connect us with your imagery, with your way of thinking, with your working between connecting past, present, and future? You know, bones reminds us like paleontology, archaeology, and so the past, and tomorrow, of course, is about the future.
Yeah. Is it on?
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see all of you here, and really thank you for coming. When it comes to the title, as we started in the morning press conference, I think the title Bones of Tomorrow for me kind of delivers all of it together, because even though it sounds a bit dark and uncanny and strange, it came out very playfully and in a way through my intuition. So of course there is this layer of the presence and the absence kind of interplaying between each other, these ideas of what is here at the moment and what has to come. I'm referring to the future, but it's important to say that the title kind of emerged while reflecting on the world of now and this idea of instability and the feeling of the collapse and the potentiality coexisting together. So for me, the title refers to these two binaries, I would say, and also, as I've said in the morning, it kind of delivers this immediate message of what it is, I would say with the title. With my titles, I always keep the interpretation open for the audience individual reading. So I'm never in like a few days ago, I was asked by a journalist what it means, like the title, etc., and what message does it carry. So I was thinking about the messages that as an individual, I'm not interested of giving any message. I don't think that I carry any message to, and I'm obliged to give any message to somebody. Just a reflection of thought. I think that the title would create a open space for the dialogue between the audience and an artist and an artwork itself. So there is no precise or fixed message hidden inside, and I think it's pretty obvious and open for the way it feels. I mean, I guess how the title feels, it means the same idea behind in a way, so there is no special kind of hidden message inside.
And how important are the title in general for your work? And normally the title comes before the work or after you realized your work?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's always a very tricky question because it depends on the project. Sometimes I know the title in advance, and through the words that I have, I kind of start to construct a narrative around it, and sometimes it's a struggle to come up with a clear title, especially for this show, because as we've talked about it like at the press conference. The main idea, how we started to build up the show, was the film Flowering and Fading, and I somehow struggled to come up with the specific title, but then I figured out the logic that the film would be expanded, like the ideas that are emerging in a film would be spread out in the other spaces. So I was thinking what would echo this idea in the other rooms of the exhibition rooms, I mean, and I came up with a title of Bones of Tomorrow, but again, like it sounds like heavy and dark, but it actually really came out very playfully and made me smile when I kind of chose that title in a way. So it's not that dark that it seems to be.
We were smile with you, actually. We smiled with you. We were very happy about the title. It sounds like, the title of a rock band of the 1980s. So,
yeah, like a heavy metal. Yeah,
reminds my youth, okay.
Yeah. And with the heavy metal, we have a lot of heavy metal.
Exactly, yeah, that's a good shift, yeah.
I would like to ask you, you talked about the presence of beauty and collapse at the same time. You talk about a dialogue that unfolds in between two spaces. This is an exhibition that grew from an idea which, started with a video, but then, how did it develop through the project space of Palazzo Strozzi and yet the Teatro dell'Oriolo? How was the relation and how did it unfold? And how was the relation also to work with such a big team of curators? You didn't have just two, you had a lot of young curators.
Arturo, and young curators.
Too many people.
You had a lot of minds to confront, to dialogue with, and to build a project which has a very, very strong, cohesive presence.
Yeah. That's a very interesting one because it was challenging for me. I think we also discussed a bit of this in the morning, but I would kind of expand this idea that usually I work, so my practice is very kind of introspective. I work in a studio alone without spending too much words or the dimension of the spoken word, let's say. And here, when I received a phone call from Arturo asking me to kind of expand the exhibition to the IED space with the curator students, I felt challenged because usually I don't work with that way because, as mentioned now, I work with the structure that I already have in my head, and I try to develop it alone or with somebody. And when the work is becoming physical, then I kind of start to adjust my thoughts in relation to it. But somehow when we started to collaborate on this project together, I arrived here especially to meet the students, and I found myself in a challenging environment because with the students we were on the blank page, we didn't have anything, and we started to somehow having this dialogue between how they would see my practice and how I would interfere with their ideas. And also it was important to exchange between, it's not only the kind of artistic context, my artistic context that mattered. We exchanged poems, literature, films, music. So I think it was you could see that it is shaped through a collaborative spirit that this whole exhibition carries through. And in general, I would say that young curators are the most brilliant people that you can meet, because the ideas that they carry are so bright and visionary that every time I had an individual conversation with them, it would be very inspiring for me to kind of find another way of how to structurize the exhibition. So it was very, very fruitful, but also challenging for me again that I kind of went out of my comfort zone, which is also important aspect of what I guess every artist should do, to challenge themselves to go through their like own spaces, like swim in the sea and you don't have anything beneath your feet, you don't have anything to touch besides your feet, so you just like swim somewhere, you know. And I had this same feeling that we were like swimming together in this like, so like expanding the spaces together with the students. So it was very important, and also with Arturo and with you, Daria, to always be there and shape these ideas into more academical framework. So yeah, I'm very happy that we kind of ended up with the result we ended up with.
We are happy too. Let's dig a little bit more into the content of the show. So here at Strozzi, we have two big video installations, one dated 2024, Flowering Fading, and a new video produced for us, Ghost Carriers.
Yeah.
They are very different but very similar. Can you describe them, and can you tell us how these two videos are related?
Yeah. So in the main film, that was the I would say the main axis of how the exhibition kind of organized and kind of has been structured. Flowering and Fading was the film that was produced by Lo Schermo dell'Arte with the support of In Between Film and Art, Art and Film, and the film was more about concentrating of the ideas of interiority and external kind of dimension, and how these two can coexist through the human and non-human like agencies. The angles would be blurred between them, so it was kind of important, a playful aspect that would come through the I would say through the dream sequences to the viewer. And the film I produced especially for the exhibition is in relation in the dialogue with the film Flowering and Fading, because here we have a kind of a fevered dream of a dog projected by the mock-up of a house that is entrapping this idea of domesticity in itself, that is projecting on something like a stray dog, which belongs to the external kind of urban landscape in a way. And if you don't know, probably some of you don't know that I come from Georgia, and in Georgia we have a lot of stray dogs, which once belonged to the domestic spaces, and they've ended up into the streets, and this urban landscape for them became somehow new wilderness, like new way of blending to kind of a new environment for them. So for me, this is, I find it beautiful and sad, and somehow I always kind of address this idea of belonging and reconciliation in a way. So with the second film, I was thinking about the idea of Phoenix coming back to life, symbolizing again this idea of the reconciliation and like this interiority and the external worlds coming together, but through the tonality of the nightmare. Because here also I would like so my approach is always to keep the work open, so never fix the tonality or the main idea too much in the face of the viewer. So I always keep the space to a viewer to reflect and have this momentum of their own labor of reading the work themselves.
Yes, then we don't only have these videos, we have a lot of, hard metal work, right? And with these two very strong structure that are welcoming and threatening the visitors, right? Can you tell us how these two installations, both here and in the Oriolo, work together?
Work together, yeah. So while
furthermore, also how the traps, because there are also photos.
There are also traps.
Traps,
we will come back to that. Yeah, in general. Speaking about the title, I forgot to mention that the title kind of brings this feeling of didactic kind of dimension. So it's not related to my personality or artistic vision in a way. So I wanted to narrow it down with the previous practice that I have been working on. Before we've done this show. So I'm also interested in this idea of the defense mechanisms and how they are originated by vegetal forms, like the forms that come from the nature, because these metal spikes somehow resemble leaves or these elements that become defensive, and then they shift to these edgy elements that might be dangerous for intruder, let's say. And also speaking about the traps, it's interesting because essentially thinking about the photography itself, for me, photography acts as a trap itself that encapsulates time in a frozen moment. But at the same time, I was interested in the ideas of the biomorphism, which is again how the forms of the defense mechanisms that are delivered through evolution in the nature, and how they migrate to the social construct, and how we adjust these defense mechanisms in our lives. So that's mimicking or playfully underlining this kind of interplay between the defense mechanism and how we try to defend ourselves from something else, like the outer world, let's say. And also, with the metal spikes, I think they refer to the bones somehow, because for me, this like gates, they stand as a skeletons. So it also is hinting or underlining this idea of the title again, that they also stand out as a skeletons of something.
And there is the fruit, of course.
Yeah,
he said it was a fruitful collaboration. So this is what he meant.
Yeah, I would say the time is the biggest collaborator with the fruit, because the fruit will start to rot and it will start to fall down on the ground. And I also really wanted to integrate the space where I don't control how the fruits would like rot or how would they decay. So it's out of the control, and I like this aspect of letting go, which is pretty present with the fruits.
And we talked with Andro during many months that we worked on the show. Many of these arguments came out, so everything is very open and in a state of constant transformation. I remember the first time that he came to Oriolo, one of the first things that he did was,
Looking up, yeah.
I sent you a picture,
Yeah, we have
beginning, We have this picture,
legendary picture of us
which is
looking
the
up.
beginning,
Yeah.
looking up, because everything
Starting
was
to wonder,
starting
yeah.
from the video that it's in room 1 here in the project space with objects levitating. So he said, why don't we do the world upside down here? Why don't we start to have this time that, you know, floats and creates another time, another dimension? In talking of this, you started to talk with the students of many of your inspirations, of poetry, of films, of music. And I remember that afternoon because we created a document with all the films, all the books. I took again the book by Oscar Wilde, The Critic as an Artist.
Critic as an Artist,
yes,
yeah.
And I reread it, and I gave the task to each one of them to take one of the things that you said and write about it.
Yeah.
Just to enter into your world. So can you tell us what are, through poetry and film, what are main inspirations?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah, that's a good question.
that
That's a
then,
very good
you know,
question.
are very open in your practice.
Yeah, I would say that with the poetry, the main aspect of why I always come back to the poetry is that it's so open for the imagination. It kind of somehow really fuels up the way I imagine things, and especially with Oscar Wilde and the other authors, because in the Oscar Wilde's essay, the way they like walk through the garden and speak about the absence and presence is a very poetic way of understanding a relationship between the two, because actually he, like for me, like the whole essay is reflecting on himself. So there are like many details that we were discussing while we were thinking the like about the exhibition. But to come back to the poetry and main inspirations, it's always hard to pinpoint, because who are the names or who are the like a specific authors. I would say like a Georgian poet, Vazhab Shavela, that I'm sure most of you don't really know because he's not really translated that much into other languages. He's a very much stays as my main inspiration. Also Rainer Maria Rilke, who I always come back to, Paul Celan, Delmore Schwartz. There are many authors. I mean, I just keep remembering the names, but it's not about the names. It's about the essence of how poetry and image making can relate to each other, because I believe strongly that these two are the same ways of expression, but one with the words and the other one with the image creation. And somehow you end up with the same result, but with a different outcomes of how they look or how they can be read, you know? I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
it does.
Yeah.
It does. You create a dimension which is very open, that, you know, transforms and changes always. It's something else, and you do it through your medium, through photography, installation, video, and the way your generosity in working with us has been so big that all your authors have, you know, filled our hearts with new ideas. So it's been a very wonderful process to go through your ideas to create all this together.
Yeah, I don't think I can add something. Thank you for that, because I'm not sure, because I've like my take is that I think that as mentioned before, I always keep the works half open, so I don't think that my works are ever finalized. So I always keep this space of like this obscure space where it never kind of ends, and that's why it's always so that's why it's always on the loop, and you cannot really define where it starts and where it ends. As the poem in a way, because the poems for me are the loops. You can just like read them from the beginning till the end on a loop. So yeah, maybe I went a bit far away from your question, but I think that somehow still
Yes.
resonating to your question. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's take a bit more.
Let's take a break.
No. Let's stick with that. Let's stay with
Like
talking
a
about
cigarette
your
break,
style.
yeah.
About your style.
Yeah.
By the way, you had recently a show in New York at the MoMA PS1, and
Yeah.
one of the legendary director of the MoMA, Alfred Barr, in 1943 curated a show with the title was Magical Realism, right?
Yeah.
Which the show included painters, not video art at the time, paintings with a very ultra-realistic style, but at the same time dreamlike or implausible. Do you like this interpretation about your work? Because
Yeah, I do. But at the same time, for me, magical realism carries a bit of specific dimension, which is very close to the ideas of liminality that also are embedded in the work I do. Magical realism is kind of acts or operates as a tool for me to construct the spaces or environments where everything could happen or everything can be kind of interconnected. So it's just a tool for me to feel more free to experiment with what I have or what somehow has to emerge. And that's why I'm addressing and I'm using the techniques of magical realism. But at the same time, I'm obsessed with this very strict line of how you start with the film with to create an expectation for the audience that it's going to evaluate in a very classical way, and then suddenly you have this shift of the weirdness entering to the image and this shift of the magical atmosphere that brings this obscurity to the work. And again, it opens up so many windows of interpretation and reading for the audience, which I respect so much. That's probably most of it.
yes.
I would add to the magicalism the idea of in between.
Yeah.
The idea of uncanny. So the idea that one form cannot be trapped and frozen, even if you try in this beautiful art here in the project space and continue. Although you try to freeze in time, but it's never, that final form.
Exactly. Yeah, with the if we speak about the installation in Oriolo, that's a very dear installation to me because, as we've said, we've been looking at the space from a blank angle, and we didn't really had any idea how to progress this in the space. But at the same time, while thinking about this photographic kind of images, I would never think of individual work as a singular entity, because for me the important part was the concept or the notion of, I would say, transitionality of the entire structure that is kind of lifted in the air, in the suspense, in the frozen suspense, that creates this danger that it might fall off. But it won't fall off. But this idea of
We hope so.
No, we won't fall.
to work about because here it's interesting because image making is becoming, with AI and with this new technology, image making is becoming so quick and everybody can deliver the images. But for me, it was important to construct the environment is especially for the images. So the images are activated by the installation and a kind of a sculptural dimension of the installation itself, and they act in the unity, through the ideas of the togetherness. So you have to read the images through the entire installation, not as a singular pieces, because they kind of repeat the same motif, but the installation gives the feeling or the breathe, another kind of another dimension, if you want, to all of the images. I take to the image making part.
It was a long process.
It was a long process.
Choosing. It's been very interesting also. The variety, because you have a lot of other pictures you would have loved to include, but
exactly,
at the end, also the curatorial.
I mean, you've seen it. Like
Yes.
he was in Tbilisi, and you've seen like probably thousands. It was a long process to deliver. But also then you have to.
You have to choose. And it's interesting also to arrive to a final, series of pictures that then really sympathize.
Yeah, that's true. But so that's where the intuition comes to the play, because I was really struggling, because I had some images that were very dear to me, but then you have to compromise in a way that what actually is activated by the installation again is the most important to include in the show, rather than thinking about images as a singular entities.
Absolutely.
Because it's not it's not a singularity that I was interested in. I was more interested in the ideas of togetherness and how you can fill the atmosphere through the installation, which is immersive in a way.
Yes, you just mentioned the practice of your studio. Your studio is in a special place, and it's a special place. Just to, when I think about, for instance, just to stay with the artist that we just had at Palazzo Strozzi, when I think about Ansel Kiefer, everything is related with Germany post-war and his youth in this context. Plus, Tracy Emin, I think about her adolescence, turbulent adolescence in Margate on the coast of the Kent, and of course I think about London in 1990s. Of course, when I think about your work, I have in mind Tbilisi, the Georgia situation, this very special context where you live, and you grown up and you studied, and as you said, there is a lot of this context in your work, right? You mentioned the dogs, but also this incredible vegetal life that you can find everywhere. This rough feeling that you have in the city. Can you tell us a little bit more about your city? Also, how you belong to this community, to the art community. Also, an owner of a community bar.
That's a big question. To speak about my country, my city. I mean, when I was born in 1993, which was a bit of tough times because of the post-Civil War, I would say. But at the same time, I don't recall much from that times. But I remember the environment being like very still and very kind of spiritually calm in a strange way, because we've been through tough times back then. And I remember kind of empty streets. We would play a football. I remember my parents. Like a small house in Tbilisi that I grew up, and it was in a way, it feels that it really had to be a kind of a dark times, but it was opposite to me, and I feel very blessed to had a privilege in a way to go through that times with my peers and with my kind of younger friend kids, and in general Tbilisi is a very diverse place to go to, and I would highly recommend all of you to at some point to come to Tbilisi to feel the vibes of the whole country and to travel around Georgia in general. But yeah, we are
sponsored by the Georgian Tourist Office, of course.
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, the art scene is shaping. It's pretty promising. We have a lack of institutions, which makes things a bit of turbulent in a way, because we have few galleries that are becoming kind of a main aspects of how the art scene starts to navigate. And yeah, I just wish that we had an institution that would kind of create a dialogue between an artist and an audience, as we are having it now, in more kind of academical framework. I'm keep doing this, I'm sorry. But one thing that you should all come to Georgia. After the talk, you buy the tickets and you fly to Georgia. Okay?
Okay, to me, we can stop here, but I hope there is some question from the public. Does anybody want to ask something to Andro? Please.
One.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I was wondering if you could open up more about the relationship between defensiveness, self-defensiveness, shopping, or deterioration.
I thought you were asking about restaurants in Tbilisi. Okay.
I didn't hear your question.
The relationship between defensiveness and deterioration, if it has some link with self-defensiveness and trapping, if you could
that's a good question. And actually, in the beginning, I mentioned the garden, ideas of the gardens, and how the exhibition narrows down this big topic of, bones of tomorrow, etc., into the idea of dying garden in a way that is defensed by the metal structure. And I believe that this idea of defining a land as a private and public is a bit of strange to me, especially in the Western societies where some of the areas are pretty private and inaccessible. And I was thinking about the ideas of how these defense mechanisms become dysfunctional within the artistic spaces, because if you remove them and if you put them in another place in the landscape, they would be reactivated in their functional way. So I'm also interested in the idea of dysfunctionality of these objects being actually trapped within the space, right? So that's a playful aspect of how you put them in a space in more playful way, that they don't function the way they should within the context of the space, if that answers your question. You know what I mean? Maybe you
aspect of it, if it works into deterioration internally.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a very speculative aspect. We can call liminal, for me, gardens are known spaces. They're between public and private, and indoor and outdoor. So, but it really depends on the culture, because within the other cultures there are different differentiations of what garden could mean in a way. So for me, that's a speculative. I just feel that I create conditional gardens, more kind of imaginative. And I don't want to focus on the word garden because the material is important, that the same material is used on the cemeteries as well as in some other, villages to define their own. So it's more about marking the spaces. And while speaking about the animality, it's also interesting how these structures that also kind of mimic vegetal forms, as I mentioned before, become kind of a defensive mechanism that can cut like non-human beings or even humans. So that's very strange for me, but also I use it as a tool. I don't really address it as something that I would explore more in a political way, but I believe that this dimension is somewhere at the backdrop as well. If you're interested in that with your question, if I'm not going on the other way, I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Good like that. Okay. Thank you very much. And please go and visit the exhibition here at Palazzo Strozzi and at the Teatro dell'Oriolo. And thank you for being here with us tonight. Do you want to say something, Andro?
I want to add, because if you have seen the exhibition at the Strozzi, which is very important, the continuation of the exhibition is at the IED Teatro dell'Oriolo.
So every information.
If you want to experience the exhibition with the full scale,
you need to come.
You need to come there because otherwise you don't really grasp the essence of what we are discussing at the moment. So I please you and ask you to join us at the other venue, which is very important if you really want to experience the exhibition with its entire kind of tonality. Just join us to the other venue.
There will be drinks,
and drinks and
motivation.
Okay. So, and there will be drinks.
So see you at the Oriolo. Thank you very much. Ciao.
You're the best.
You are.